In a peaceful village called Umunze, there lived a girl named Adanna. Adanna was known for her kindness and generosity. She was always ready to help those around her, making her beloved in the village. Her father, Chukwudi, was a hard-working farmer, and her mother, Ngozi, was a trader in the local market. Though their family didn't have much, they were content with the simple life they led. Adanna was an excellent student at the village school. Every day she walked to school with her best friend, Kioma. Her teachers admired her for her focus and eagerness to learn. Despite the challenges she faced at home, Adanna always excelled in her studies, and her dream was to one day become a teacher to help the children in her village. One day after school, Adanna and Chioma decided to visit the village market. There, they met a woman named Oluchi, who had recently moved to Umunze. Oluchi was different from anyone Adanna had ever met. She was wealthy, always dressed in fine clothes, and often spoke about the importance of wealth and status. Curious, Adanna began spending more time with Oluchi, even though Kioma warned her to be careful. Oluchi introduced Adanna to a world of luxury that she had never experienced before. She gave her gifts and told her that she could achieve great things if she followed her advice. But little did Adanna know, Oluchi's promises came with a hidden price, one that would soon change Adanna's life forever. As Adanna continued to spend time with Oluchi, she noticed that her new friend always had money and fine things. Oluchi had connections to wealthy traders and business people from other villages. She constantly talked about how easy it was to make money if one was willing to bend the rules. One evening, Oluchi sat Adanna down and shared a secret with her. If you truly want to be successful, you must make sacrifices. Nothing in life comes free. She then presented an opportunity. A man from another village was willing to pay a lot of money for a child. Adanna was shocked. She had never considered such a thing, but Oluchi made it sound simple. You don't need to worry about the baby, Oluchi said. Just think of the money and the good life you could have. Adanna struggled with Oluchi's proposal. She knew deep down that it was wrong, but the idea of lifting her family out of poverty was tempting. Her parents worked so hard and still had so little. The thought of being able to provide them with a better life clouded her judgment. One night, after much hesitation, Adanna made the dangerous decision to follow Oluchi's plan. She convinced herself that it was the only way to help her family. As the months went by, Adanna felt a growing sense of guilt, but she kept pushing those feelings aside, focusing only on the promise of wealth that lay ahead. Soon, Adanna gave birth to a baby girl. The moment she held her daughter in her arms, she felt a powerful connection, one that she hadn't expected. Tears filled her eyes as she realized what she was about to do. But before she could change her mind, Oluchi arrived, ready to take the baby to the buyer. Adanna felt a deep sadness in her heart as she handed over her daughter. She had made a decision she could never take back. Even as Oluchi handed her a bag of money, the weight of her actions began to settle on her. Adanna had chosen wealth over the bond with her child, and it was a choice that would haunt her for the rest of her life. As time passed, rumors began to spread in Umunze. The villagers noticed that Adanna, once a bright and hopeful young girl, had become distant and troubled. No one knew the full story, but they whispered about the changes they saw in her. Some even guessed that something was terribly wrong. Adanna's parents were confused by the sudden wealth their daughter brought home. They questioned where she got the money, but she brushed off their concerns, saying that she had been working for a wealthy family in another village. But Adanna knew she couldn't hide the truth forever, and the guilt weighed heavily on her heart. One day, Kioma, who had always been close to Adanna, decided to confront her. Adanna, what has happened to you? You've changed. You no longer smile or laugh like you used to. I know something is wrong. Please tell me. Adanna couldn't hold back her tears any longer. She confessed everything to Kioma, telling her about the deal she had made with Oluchi and the baby she had sold. Kioma was shocked and heartbroken. Adanna, this is not the way. You must find a way to make things right, she said. But Adanna didn't know how to fix the terrible mistake she had made. Days turned into weeks, and Adanna found herself consumed by guilt. The bag of money she had received now felt like a heavy burden, not a reward. Every time she looked at the money, she remembered the innocent face of her baby and the wrong she had done. She stopped eating and spent most of her days in silence, lost in regret. Her parents grew worried, sensing that something was terribly wrong. Adanna, you're not yourself. Please talk to us, her mother, Ngozi, pleaded one evening. But Adanna couldn't bring herself to tell them the truth. She didn't want to break their hearts, so she kept her secret hidden, even as it ate away at her soul. One afternoon, Oluchi came to visit Adanna, bringing with her more gifts and promises of future wealth. You did well, Adanna. Look at all the money you've made. Imagine how much more you could have if you continue, Oluchi said, her voice smooth and convincing. But this time, Adanna didn't feel excitement or gratitude. Instead, she felt anger. I don't want this money, Oluchi. I can't live with what I've done, Adanna shouted, tears streaming down her face. Oluchi, unfazed, smiled coldly. It's too late for regrets. You've made your choice. The only way forward is to keep going. Adanna's heart sank. She realized that Oluchi had no sympathy for her, and she was trapped in a web of greed that was growing tighter around her. But something inside her stirred, a determination to break free, no matter the cost. As the days went by, Adanna's guilt turned into fear. She began having nightmares about her baby, hearing her cries in the dead of night. She would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart racing. The villagers noticed her growing anxiety, and whispers started to spread again. One evening, an elder named Baba Emeka, who was known for his wisdom, came to visit Adanna's family. There's something troubling your daughter, he said quietly to Adanna's parents. She carries a heavy burden. If it's not lifted soon, it will destroy her. Chukwudi and Ngozi were alarmed. They approached Adanna and begged her to share what was weighing on her heart. We are your parents. We love you. Whatever it is, we will face it together, Chukwudi said. But Adanna, too ashamed of her actions, still couldn't bring herself to speak. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, Adanna decided to find a way to make things right. She knew she couldn't change the past, but perhaps she could try to find her baby and bring her back. One evening, she quietly left the village, determined to track down the buyer. Her journey took her to a distant village where the buyer, a wealthy man named Chief Okafor, lived. When Adanna arrived at his grand compound, she felt a surge of hope. Maybe he would understand and return her child. But when she approached the guards and asked to speak with Chief Okafor, they laughed at her. You sold your child and now you want her back? That's not how it works, one of them sneered. Adanna's heart broke. She had come all this way, only to be turned away, but she refused to give up. She knelt before the gates and pleaded with the guards. Please, I made a terrible mistake. I'll do anything to make it right. Just as Adanna was about to give up, a woman named Amaka, one of Chief Okafor's servants, approached her. Amaka had heard Adanna's pleas and was moved by her sorrow. Come with me, she whispered, leading Adanna to a small hut at the edge of the compound. Chief Okafor's wife has the baby. I'll try to speak to her on your behalf. Adanna's heart raced. Could it be true? Could her baby still be in this very compound? Amaka left her in the hut, promising to return with news. Adanna sat anxiously, praying that she would be reunited with her child. After what felt like hours, Amaka returned. Chief Okafor's wife is willing to meet with you, but I must warn you, she may not give the child back easily. Adanna nodded, her hands trembling. She was ready to face whatever challenge lay ahead, as long as it meant a chance to make things right. Adanna was led into the grand house, where she met Chief Okafor's wife, Neka. Neka was a proud and elegant woman, holding the baby Adanna had given up in her arms. The sight of her child made Adanna's heart ache with longing. Please, I made a terrible mistake, Adanna began, her voice shaking. I want my child back. Neka looked at Adanna with cold eyes. This child is mine now. You gave her up. She has a good life here, better than anything you could have given her. Adanna's heart sank. She realized that Neka was right, but that didn't make the pain any less. But she is still my daughter, Adanna whispered, tears falling from her eyes. I will do anything to make up for what I've done. Please, let me be part of her life. Neka considered Adanna's words for a long time. Finally, she spoke. You made a choice, and choices have consequences. But I am not without mercy. I will allow you to see your daughter, but only if you work for me. You will live here as a servant, and you must earn the right to be in her life. Adanna hesitated. The thought of becoming a servant was daunting, but the thought of never seeing her daughter again was worse. I accept, she said quietly. I'll do whatever it takes. From that day on, Adanna worked in Chief Okafor's household, doing whatever was asked of her. She endured harsh treatment from the other servants and the coldness of Neka, but every moment spent with her daughter made it worth it. Slowly she began to rebuild her life, piece by piece. As months passed, Adanna earned the right to see her daughter more often. She cherished every moment, watching her child grow and learning more about the person she was becoming. Though the path she had chosen was difficult, Adanna knew she was on the road to redemption. However, life in Chief Okafor's house was not easy. Neka constantly reminded her of her past mistakes, using every opportunity to belittle her. But Adanna bore it all with grace, knowing that her sacrifice was the only way to stay close to her daughter. Despite the hardships, Adanna found comfort in her growing bond with her child. She had lost everything before, but now she was determined not to lose her daughter again. As the years passed, Adanna continued to work diligently in Chief Okafor's household. She was no longer just a servant, but a quiet, loving presence in her daughter's life. Every day, she prayed that her child, now named Ezinne, would never find out the truth about how she had been sold. Despite her difficult situation, Adanna found joy in small moments with Ezinne, teaching her how to count, helping her with her chores, and telling her stories by the fire. Neka watched them closely, still wary of Adanna's presence, but even she could not deny the bond between mother and daughter. Adanna knew that her sacrifice was worth it. Even though she had lost everything, her freedom, her dignity, she had gained something far more precious, the chance to be near her child. Yet she also knew that the day would come when the truth would have to be revealed. Back in Umunze, life carried on, but the memory of Adanna lingered in the minds of the villagers. Some still whispered about her sudden disappearance and the mysterious wealth she had briefly flaunted. Baba Emeka, the village elder, often visited Chukwudi and Ngozi, asking if they had heard from their daughter. "We haven't heard from Adanna in a long time," Ngozi said sadly. "We pray that she is safe, but we worry she may have gone down a dark path." Baba Emeka nodded, his wise eyes full of concern. "If there's any way to bring her back, we must find it. She is still part of this village, no matter what mistakes she has made." The villagers began to talk about Adanna's return, hoping that she could redeem herself and rejoin their community. One evening, as Neka and Chief Okafor hosted a gathering at their compound, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Baba Emeka, who had traveled all the way from Umunze to speak with Chief Okafor. His arrival caused quite a stir, as he was known for his wisdom and respected throughout the region. Adanna watched from the shadows as Baba Emeka spoke with the chief. She knew that his presence was not a coincidence. Baba Emeka had come for her, and the truth she had been hiding for so long was about to come to light. After the gathering, Baba Emeka asked to speak with Adanna. "My child," he said gently, "your parents have been worried about you. They don't know what happened, but they sense that you are carrying a great burden. It's time to tell the truth." With trembling hands, Adanna told Baba Emeka everything: the deal she had made with Oluchi, the child she had sold, and the life she had been living as a servant to stay close to her daughter. Baba Emeka listened patiently, his face filled with sadness and understanding. "You have made many mistakes, Adanna," he said after she finished. "But the greatest mistake would be to continue hiding the truth. It's time to make things right, not just for yourself, but for your daughter." Adanna nodded, tears streaming down her face. She knew Baba Emeka was right, but the thought of revealing the truth to Ezinne filled her with dread. How could she tell her daughter that she had sold her for money? The next morning, Adanna asked to speak with Neka in private. "I need to tell Ezinne the truth," Adanna said, her voice shaking. "She deserves to know who I really am." Neka, who had grown fond of Ezinne, was hesitant. "Are you sure this is the right decision? She may never forgive you." Adanna took a deep breath. "I have to take that chance. I can't live with this secret any longer. She needs to know that I am her mother." Later that day, Adanna sat down with Ezinne and gently explained everything: the choices she had made, the consequences of her actions, and the reason she had stayed close all these years. Ezinne listened in silence, her young mind struggling to process the information. When Adanna finished, Ezinne looked up at her with tear-filled eyes. "You're my real mother?" she asked softly. Adanna nodded, her heart breaking as she waited for her daughter's response. For days, Ezinne kept her distance from Adanna, unsure of how to feel. She had always known Neka as her mother and had grown up in a life of comfort. Now she was faced with the truth that the woman who had been by her side, quietly working as a servant, was her real mother. Ezinne's young heart was torn. She loved Neka for raising her, but she also felt a deep connection to Adanna. She didn't know how to reconcile these feelings, and she spent many sleepless nights trying to make sense of it all. One evening, Ezinne approached Adanna as she was sitting alone by the fire. "I don't understand why you did what you did," Ezinne said quietly, "but I know that you love me. I can feel it." Adanna's heart swelled with emotion. She reached out to hold her daughter's hand, and for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. "I do love you, Ezinne, more than anything in this world." As Ezinne began to accept Adanna as her mother, Neka faced a difficult decision. She had raised Ezinne as her own, but she knew that Adanna's bond with the child was unbreakable. After much thought, Neka decided to let go. One morning, she called Adanna and Ezinne together. "It's time for me to leave," Neka said, her voice soft but firm. "Ezinne, you belong with your real mother. I will always love you, but this is how it must be." Ezinne hugged Neka tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for everything, Mama," she whispered. Neka smiled sadly, knowing that her time as Ezinne's mother had come to an end. She left the village, leaving Ezinne in Adanna's care. With Neka gone, Adanna and Ezinne began to rebuild their relationship. It wasn't easy. There were still many wounds that needed healing, but they were determined to move forward together. Adanna worked hard to provide for her daughter, taking on various jobs in the village. She was no longer focused on wealth or status, but on being the best mother she could be. The love she had for Ezinne gave her strength, and over time they built a bond that was stronger than anything Adanna had ever imagined. The villagers who had once whispered about Adanna's past began to see her in a new light. They admired her for her resilience and for the way she had turned her life around. Adanna had learned a valuable lesson. True wealth was not found in gold or jewels, but in the love and connections we build with those we care about. As Adanna's life began to stabilize, word of her story spread throughout Umunze. Some villagers were slow to forgive, still holding on to the memory of her mistakes, but Baba Emeka, always the voice of wisdom, reminded them that everyone deserved a second chance. "Adanna has suffered and learned from her actions," he told the village elders one evening. "It is time to forgive her and welcome her back into our community. She has proven her love for her child, and that is the greatest wealth of all." Slowly, the villagers began to soften their hearts. They started to visit Adanna's home, offering help and support. The healing process had begun, not just for Adanna, but for the entire village. One day, as Adanna was walking through the village market, she saw a familiar face. It was Oluchi, the woman who had led her down the path of greed and regret. Oluchi was no longer the wealthy, confident woman she had once been. She looked tired and worn, her clothes shabby, and her eyes hollow. Adanna's heart ached for her former friend. She approached Oluchi and asked, "What happened to you?" Oluchi sighed deeply, her voice heavy with regret. "I lost everything. The money, the power, it's all gone. I chased wealth for so long that I forgot what really mattered." Adanna saw the pain in Oluchi's eyes and realized that they had both been victims of their own choices. Without hesitation, Adanna offered Oluchi a place to stay and a chance to rebuild her life. It was an act of kindness that surprised even herself. Though Oluchi had been the source of her downfall, Adanna knew that forgiveness was the only way to truly heal. As the years passed, Ezinne grew into a bright and kind-hearted young woman. She excelled in school, much like her mother had in her youth, and was loved by everyone in the village. Adanna was proud of the person her daughter had become, and she knew that the sacrifices she had made were worth it. Ezinne often spoke of becoming a teacher, just as Adanna had once dreamed of doing. Adanna encouraged her daughter to pursue her dreams, knowing that Ezinne had the potential to do great things. Though life had been difficult, Adanna felt a deep sense of peace. She had found redemption through her love for her daughter, and now she could look toward the future with hope. Umunze had changed since the days of Adanna's youth. The village was now a place of unity and forgiveness, where people supported one another in times of need. Baba Emeka's wise counsel had helped heal old wounds, and the villagers had learned the importance of compassion and understanding. Adanna, once the subject of gossip and shame, was now a respected member of the community. She had earned the villagers' trust through her actions, and they admired her for the way she had rebuilt her life. Ezinne, too, was loved by all. She often helped the younger children in the village with their studies, and many parents looked to her as a role model for their own daughters. As Adanna grew older, she often sat with the village children, telling them stories of her past. She wanted them to learn from her mistakes and understand the true meaning of wealth. Gold and jewels can bring comfort, she would say, but they can never replace the love of family. The choices you make today will shape your future. Be kind, be honest, and always put those you love above everything else. The children listened intently, knowing that Adanna's words came from a place of wisdom and experience. Her story had become a lesson for generations, and the village elders often reminded the young ones of Adanna's journey. One day, as Adanna and Ezinne were walking through the village, they encountered a young woman in distress. She had just arrived in Umunze, fleeing from a difficult life in a nearby village. Without hesitation, Adanna took the woman into her home, offering her food, shelter, and a chance to start over. Ezinne watched her mother with admiration. "You always help people, even when they've done wrong or made mistakes," she said. Adanna smiled. "I've learned that kindness is the most powerful thing we have. It can heal wounds that seem impossible to mend. I was given a second chance, and now it's my turn to offer the same to others." As the years passed, Adanna's story became a cherished part of Umunze's history. Her journey from greed and regret to love and redemption was a reminder to everyone that it's never too late to change. Ezinne grew up to become a teacher, just as she had dreamed. She taught the children of Umunze not just about reading and writing, but about the importance of love, forgiveness, and kindness. Her mother's story was always a part of her lessons, a living example of how even the greatest mistakes can be redeemed. Adanna, now an old woman, sat by the fire one evening, surrounded by her family and friends. As she looked at Ezinne, she felt a deep sense of peace. She had made many mistakes, but she had also found a way to heal and rebuild her life. Her legacy was not the wealth she had once sought, but the love she had given and the lessons she had learned. And so, the story of Adanna and Ezinne lived on, a tale of redemption, kindness, and the power of second chances. As the years continued to pass, Adanna became a pillar of wisdom in Umunze. Her story was not just told by the elders, but became part of the fabric of the village's teachings. Parents often gathered their children around Adanna's fire to listen to her speak, not only about her past, but also about life's simple but profound truths. Ezinne, now a grown woman, had blossomed into a respected teacher and leader in the village. She carried her mother's lessons with her in everything she did. Her compassion and kindness toward others earned her admiration, and she always remembered the deep love that her mother had shown her, despite all the hardships. One day, the village council approached Adanna and Ezinne with a request. They wanted Ezinne to take on a greater role in the village, helping to guide the younger generation and preserve the stories and traditions that had been passed down through the years. Ezinne was honored by the request and humbly accepted the responsibility. She knew that her mother's journey and wisdom had paved the way for her own path, and she wanted to ensure that future generations learned from the past. As Ezinne took on this new role, Adanna watched her daughter with pride. She had once feared that she had lost everything, but in the end, she realized she had gained far more than she could have ever imagined. She had gained love, forgiveness, and a second chance to make things right. One evening, as the sun began to set and the golden light bathed the village in warmth, Adanna sat by the fire with Ezinne. The sound of children's laughter filled the air as they played nearby. Adanna turned to her daughter, her heart full of gratitude. Ezinne, you are the greatest gift I could have ever received. You've become everything I had ever hoped for. Ezinne smiled, her eyes shining with affection for her mother. And you, Mama, have shown me what it means to be strong and to love deeply. Your story has shaped not just my life, but the lives of so many in this village. Adanna nodded slowly, a peaceful smile on her face. It's true that life is full of mistakes and difficult choices, but it's how we choose to rise from them that defines who we are. I'm grateful every day for the second chances we've been given. As night fell, Adanna and Ezinne sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars twinkle in the sky. The village around them had become a place of love and healing, and both mother and daughter knew that their legacy would continue to live on in the hearts of those they had touched. And so Adanna's story came full circle. From a life marked by mistakes and regret, she had found redemption through love and kindness. The village of Umunze would always remember her as a woman who had lost her way, but found the strength to rebuild her life. And in doing so, she had given her daughter and her village the most valuable lesson of all, that love, forgiveness, and second chances are the true treasures in life. Thank you for tuning in to Tales Motherland again. We sincerely appreciate your viewership and likes and comments. Please be sure to hit the subscribe and like button and stay connected to us for new intriguing African stories and folktale. Once again, thanks for watching.